How can a Caucasian or white person effectively give instruction on African American history? What are your thoughts, man?
How could a Caucasian or white educator basically teach African American history, right?
Precisely.
Or black history? Okay, so let's break this down first and foremost, right?
Heavy big boy.
The optimal word is the truth. Let me say it a few more times. Truth. The truth. That's what it ultimately revolves around, okay? Is coming to some semblance of the truth, right? And there was Jack Nicholson, Mr. Mayon. Jack Nicholson one time in a movie, there's a movie, he says, "You can handle the truth." I don't know if you're familiar with that movie.
Please remind me, man.
But what his statement when he says you can't handle truth symbolizes that the truth is a hard pill to swallow. It's tough, particularly pertaining to history and black history or African American history, which somewhat are a little bit black history and African American history somewhat a little different, right? African American history, and this is to me, is relative to Western history, United States, African American history, which oftentimes in schools, curriculum-wise, is taught as two main points: slavery, civil rights movement. Right?
1,000%.
You know what I'm talking about? That's what it
1,000%.
normally gets. That's how it normally gets taught. When it's a lot more expansive than that. Black history is definitely more expansive and more. There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
Black history, Western, United States, the Western part, Western history, but also Eastern history, Africa, other continents, right? Black history permeates all of that. European history, everything. So when teaching for a Caucasian or white person to teach African American or black history, they have a person, anybody, needs to try their best to get to the truth. And the truth, you always arrive at the truth through evidence.
Yeah.
Right? Perspective. Like if, for example, when you go to court, let's say there's a trial for murder or something, right?
Yeah.
Right? The detectives interview not one person, right? Multiple sources, maybe 10, 20 people. Because it's about perspective, right? Everybody's going to see something a little different. And that, I relate that to teaching any subject, but particularly black or African American history. You got to get the perspective. Because you might have 20 people, 20 different sources that says hits different angles or see different things. So you got to present all of those and let, the students or the people kind of deduce and come up with their own sort of, okay, this is what it is. You never get to the full truth, but like I said, some semblance of it.
Brandon, that sounds wonderful. However, I'm a little distracted because our co-host over here, our co-host Bronco, is trying to destroy something. He's a little disruptive. Cut it out.
All right.
I'm sorry, Brandon. All right, interruption with co-host. I think he's a little disgruntled that he wasn't getting a lot of shine, but it's all right. Go ahead, Mr. B.
Yeah,
I apologize, man.
Like I said, this idea of the truth, which is I saw a quote: the truth is rarely pure and never simple.
Yeah.
The truth is
Who's that by?
It's a complex thing. I'm not too sure. I just heard it somewhere.
I like
But
that.
it's a complex thing. You know what I mean? And I think another important part of just history overall, but in terms of black history or African American history, and who's teaching it, right? And if a Caucasian or white person, how they can effectively teach it, right? Getting rid of your biases, whether you're black, white, whatever. If you're teaching history, African American, black, get rid of those biases, right? We're human. We run off emotion, but you got to get rid of those biases. You can't be biased and choose a side. You got to, what I could say, call it down the middle,
I like it.
particularly when it comes to history.
Absolutely.
Just call it down the middle, but that's very tough because black and African American history has a lot of just history in general, but black and African American history has a lot of hurt, a lot of oppression, right? It elicits a lot of, like I said, a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. So for a teacher, let's say you're European, you're a Caucasian teacher, right? And you're talking about this hurt and this pain. It's going to kind of be difficult because like I said, get rid of the biases. Take yourself out of it, because if you're European or a white teacher, you might think, wow, I contributed to this.
But
So it might elicit some pain. So that's why I say keep the biases, keep those feelings away from it and just call it down the middle.
Counterpoint, though,
Counterpoint,
Brand, if you don't mind. I just think it's not that easy for white teachers.
Agree.
It's not that black or white, because then now you're calling things down the middle, but it might be hard for them to present it that way. And there might be other African-American educators or students who are probably looking at them with a great deal of scrutiny because they are white. And it's like, you better watch the way you're presenting this history to us. And I speak on that because that's actually happened in the district I'm currently in. It's happened in my previous district. So the issue that lies is that sometimes there are white teachers who want to forego giving instruction on African American history because they don't want to say anything that's too controversial. There are many videos out there. There are many articles out there. And it's not just on African American history. It's also on Native American history or during Hispanic Heritage Month, where some teachers may say the wrong thing that ruffles a lot of feathers because they were just a little misinformed, or the way they presented it, or the way they presented a certain lesson. How could they navigate that? Is there like a particular rubric that they could follow, a curriculum? Like how could we make instruction on African American history, one, qualitative, where we know like this is good instruction? And how could we give equitable instruction for every teacher, white, black, Spanish, Asian, just so they could provide it in a way that's effective and not controversial? Mr. B, what are your thoughts on that, man?
I think, speaking of that, maybe, like I said, multiple sources. Get different angles and different perspectives, right? And I'll give you an example. So last year, I covered as an ELA teacher, right?
Yeah.
In that realm, an article about the Black Panther Party, who are the Black Panther Party for self-defense, who are intricate to the civil rights movement, right? So I remember I did a project on the Black Panther Party in high school. My history teacher, he was a European, a Caucasian guy.
Yeah.
He said to me, listen, the way the Black Panther Party has been portrayed historically,
Yeah.
he said, is a far cry from what they really are.
1,000%.
He told me that before I even did the project. And he said what they represented was totally different. Like you would see this militant and these visuals, these pictures, these militant African-American men with these big rifles, right? So automatically, the viewers would automatically say, oh, wow, they would probably be horrified and think, wow, these guys are violent. They're going to try to overthrow the government. But the truth were the pistols were symbolic. When you're talking about symbolism, in their jackets and everything, they were trying to protect, and context is important.
Yeah.
At the time, there was a great deal of police brutality within the neighborhood.
Yeah.
So they armed themselves to protect from just the brutalization of the people within their communities.
That's it.
And here was the thing. It was actually legal. At the time, in order to carry weapons, it was legal. There's more information to it, but at the time it was a legal thing in California state law that they could carry weapons like that. So context is important. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's extremely important, is when you put the context, you give the reasonings, the why, and like I said, you just explain it. I know, kind of like what you just said, it's kind of hard. It's hard to separate yourself.
Yeah.
Your feelings from feeling like, wow. Because it's difficult for both sides.
Yeah.
Because history is just a lot of bloodshed, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, a lot of war and oppression. But I think being able to teach it from different perspectives, giving different opinions, different perspectives, and letting everybody kind of see these different viewpoints and these different theories, and then come to
So that's one way to do it. So what it sounds like, should there be like professional developments for teachers, and should there be a set curriculum, like an Engage New York, or I forget the other one that I used to use, but any type of curriculum that provides you with the resources? Because then again, that brings another issue, like how do we vet these resources out, and then how do we know that they're objective as possible, right? So
Objectivity, yeah.
I think that's really, it's critical, because if I'm going to be teaching something, I want to make sure that I'm super comfortable with it. So when I would teach Night by Elie Wiesel, and a memoir about the author Elie Wiesel, and it's around World War II, and it's basically his story of making it through the Holocaust. I would have a challenging time with that, because I wouldn't want to say something that would be deemed insensitive. Granted, when I was teaching Night by Elie Wiesel, I wasn't teaching it in a predominantly Jewish community or with a big Jewish demographics, but I was still very critical, and I was meticulous in how I would teach it. I was using the Engage New York curriculum, so I felt comfortable.
Yes.
Because I figured if this is on Engage New York, where you have thousands of educators using it, I'm sure that they're doing their diligence. I would also do my diligence, read some of the articles multiple times, do extra research, and
Research, that stuff is important.
but then again, it's like, how do I know my research is unbiased? So I hear that a lot. So that I think that's why it's not black or white, Mr. B. It's a lot more gray than that.
If I could interject that.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So keep your own personal views out of it, I think, Mr. Mayon. Like you said, you have the curriculum, right? You get, the content, the lessons from wherever, right? You keep your own personal opinions out of it, number one. Because controversy normally comes from our own sort of, like I said, our own biases, in our own sort of personal opinions. We feel this certain way about it, right?
Absolutely.
Which comes from a more personalized place or personalized connection we have to certain things, right? Particularly if you're of the culture, or of a certain race, and they're saying something about you, So of course that's obviously that's gonna happen. So I think, like I said, just being objective. Just stating what the so-called facts are.
Okay.
Facts oftentimes can be arbitrary. They could be argued. They can be interpreted differently.
Yeah.
But, whatever the facts are, whatever the information, just put the information out there. Keep your own personal opinion out, right? And go from there. And then what I would also say, try your best to find articles or sources that are unbiased, that just go off of, maybe they come from different sources or written about different parts of African American Black history, but that they're somewhat unbiased and they're not opinionized. They're more.
Those are the best resources to possibly use. Hey, Brent, Mr. B, I want to bring it back to what you mentioned, how when African American history, Black history is taught in our curriculums, there are two key things, all right, that it's usually addressed: enslavement, civil rights. I might even add the antebellum period in there, right? All right, that's cool, but I feel as if that there are many missing opportunities there, Mr. B. Many missing opportunities there. So it's not even just a white or black thing, and not just a white instructor. I think that there are missing opportunities for even African American Black instructors to also teach maybe the sociology of the Great Migration, right? Just understanding that big period, the Harlem Renaissance, the Black Panthers Party and what they symbolize. I don't know if you knew, but the Black Panthers Party is like one of the first parties to institute free and reduced breakfast. But those are the things that are not mentioned when you talk about the Black Panthers Party. There's automatically this stigma about them with big, massive guns and those nice looking Kangos or berets that Mr. B has on his head every episode. There are a lot of things that are missing there, Mr. B. I think there are these opportunities to really provide that instruction. I think it really needs to begin with planning. And then, like you said, I think it's taking white teachers, Black teachers, Asian teachers, Hispanic teachers, and giving them that room or opportunity to really plan and create a curriculum, right? Curriculum mapping, and then bouncing and volleyballing ideas.
Can you explain what is curriculum mapping?
Curriculum mapping essentially is just getting together, looking at your larger goals and thinking of Grant Wiggins. Grant Wiggins, a big researcher in the educational field, and backwards design. Have your larger overview, your goals, and then working backwards of what you're going to do, the process to get that larger goal. And then you create curriculum, and basically you create your instruction. You pull up resources, how something is going to be instructed. You map out the pacing. Is it going to take 3-4 weeks? Is it a 6-week unit? So that's curriculum mapping. So Mr. B, my question to you now is, do you think it's essential for white instructors specifically to reach out to some of their African-American Black colleagues prior to a unit on the Harlem Renaissance, or even the unit just on enslavement? That's taught in every, I can't say every, but I know it's taught in just about every Westchester County, I'll speak more specifically to where I'm located, district. Do you think it's necessary, even if they have all the resources, they should still reach out like, hey, I plan on doing this. What are your thoughts? Or do you not deem that necessary?
I heard a quote, collaboration over competition.
I love it.
So as educators, just in life, we
Can you
have
just
to
repeat that again, Brandon?
collaboration over competition.
I like it. Okay.
So as an educator, I'm a major proponent of collabing with other teachers. Like I said, I'm big on perspective, getting getting insight, different insights. So if you could get insight or pull or reach out to anybody else who's going to help you, right, maximize the effectiveness or put out the best lesson or teaching you can, then that's what you should do.
I love it.
You should reach out. Do you understand what I'm saying?
And it's like you use it or leave it too, Brand. You know
Use it or leave it.
Right? So whatever they tell you doesn't mean automatically that, all right, this you hold it with a great deal of credence. It's your choice to whether, all right, I am going to take what so-and-so told me and, I'm going to try to at least apply it in my instruction, or no, I'm not going to use that. That's okay. That's at your discretion. But I think the opportune word there is collaboration. I think you should still use this as an opportunity to seek out African-American folks who may know a little more about or the nuances about their history, or have personal anecdotes that they might want you to share. They might appreciate that.
Yeah.
I love when I have a lot of my team consisted of 3 white colleagues, right? They always tend to reach out to me if they're going to be doing something about like African-American history, and I appreciate it.
Do you appreciate it?
I appreciate it, bro.
Kind of piggybacking off that.
Amazing people.
Two different anecdotes, 2 different times where, for me, I had a colleague who was actually of the she was Jewish religion, Judaism. Oh man, and we would just sit and talk, and she even printed stuff out and came and would tell me about like the religion and the Torah and geographically, like how which I didn't know about different types of categorizations of Judaism and stuff like that, and history. And it was amazing. It helped me out greatly when teaching a little bit about religion. And then I had another coworker who was from, and she actually returned back to her original country. She told me about the Torah. Not the Torah, excuse me. She was Muslim.
Okay.
And the Muslim, it's not coming to me right now, but.
The Bible? Like
no, it's not
Bible?
the Muslim, it's the Quran.
Oh, that's why I asked you, like their Bible, bro. Yeah, the Quran.
Yeah. Oh, you said their Bible. I thought you said the Bible.
Oh, yeah, their Bible. Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Let me get you right now. So she started, giving, talking about the Quran and history of the Torah or the Quran, excuse me, the Quran. But not just from her, what she was taught in school, but also what she learned just from her family. And those of the same religion. And it was just so enlightening to me, and just illuminated, like, wow, I'm just learning this stuff. A lot of stuff I didn't know. And it was, like I said, just so collaborating with people who are of the culture of certain religion, who can relate, who knows. It's only going to be it's going to be auspicious to, everyone.
1,000% auspicious. I like that word. And to be truthful, Brand, there's Tana Lay. She's she's a Thai American. I don't want to get that wrong, but I know she's she's Thai American or Vietnamese American. Excuse me, Vietnamese American author. And one of the stories that I've covered with my students earlier in the year was Inside Out and Back Again, about the Vietnam War and just the refugee experience. And in her author's note, she mentions something along the lines of everybody has a story to tell. So it's not
Say that again.
everybody has a story to tell. So listen, Ask questions, be a little more intentional when you're talking to people, expand your bubble. So we live inside of a bubble, expand, break your bubble and learn about different cultures. Listen, ask questions and learn about stories. And you could receive a great deal of information about things, people that you never knew. So I love that you just mentioned that. I think it's really important. It's not, and it sounds like you're saying it's not just always about the research. It's also about conversations and listening to other people, your own family members, about certain traditions or their own testimonies about a particular time period, right? I think that's necessary. Hey, Brandon, before we wrap this up, I just have one question. So the Black Lives Matter movement, we know that this is history in the making, I like to call it, right? It's a little part history, 2012, Trayvon Martin and the Black Lives Matter movement. That's when the proliferation of that, but it's still current history. Or it's history in the making, it's current for us. My question to you isn't, because I heard a common theme of like separating your biases as a white instructor or any type of instructor, right, Brandon? If you have a partner who is part of the police force and you have to possibly teach All American Boys by Jason Reynolds, Brandon Kiley, or you have to teach Ghost Boys, how do you teach that without any biases? And to give you perspective or some information, Ghost Boys, All American Boys has to deal with police brutality. Just want to hear your thoughts on that. Maybe this could help, because maybe there are some educators out there who are dealing with this, right? Maybe you have a parent. Maybe you have a child who's part of the police force. How do you possibly teach that without any biases, and you teach it effectively?
Try not to generalize.
Okay.
I mean, we live in a society where we generalize, which is a lot easier.
Yeah.
Blacks, whites, Asians, right? We put everybody, but we're all humans. Mm-hmm. We're all humans. Police officers are humans, right? And here's my thing. It's kind of hard, because if I was someone who dealt with police brutality, I would be biased. So it's a little different, and you have to factor that in.
Absolutely.
Right? You can't be insensitive to that. But with everything else, I think if you're teaching something that you aren't connected to emotionally, personally, trying your best not to generalize is huge. Because I look at myself being who identifies I'm black, right? I don't want everybody to throw me into this one box. Oh, you're black, so you're like this. Because as individuals, there are a lot of similarities, but still a lot of differences. So you have to look at, and I heard this in a class before, a history class, that you have to look at everybody as individuals. Everybody's action is somewhat individual. Is somewhat, is a manifestation of that individual person. Although it could have been influenced by a greater sort of source.
Yeah.
Right? Due to, kind of our ideologies, so to speak, right? That's context. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand.
But at the same time, just try to teach it, which is, it's hard though, it's hard. But don't generalize on this one. Don't say all the police or all this and that.
That's huge.
But this one person. And you got to talk a little bit more about, like I said, the context. What was there? What were the circumstances surrounding? And
so we have Glenn Singleton, and he has a text, a great text, basically how to have powerful conversations about race, right? Whether in any environment, not just a classroom. And he has something called the 4 agreements. One of the 4 agreements is speak your truth. And this is usually when I'm having tough conversations or when I'm going to have perhaps generally the 4 agreements are just like the tenets of my entire class, but I always remind students of those tenets when I know we're going to have tough conversations. Speak your truth is huge, and it's like I try not to generalize, racialize your voice. So when I give examples, me as a cisgender African-American man, right? It could be totally different for maybe a transgender man who's African-American. We have 2 different lifestyles,
different
and we
experiences.
have different experiences.
Yes.
Excellent, Brand. But Mr. B, can I just give you my response to how I think a teacher should approach it?
By all means.
I think you just really need to be forthcoming with any type of information. Let your students know that, hey, listen, my partner is a police officer. I've done a great deal of research, and I've had a great deal of amount of conversations with people. We've had very true and honest conversations. I read this book multiple times. I have my personal feelings. I'm going to try to separate all that. Show your students that you are fallible. Nobody's infallible as humans. We make mistakes.
Particularly with our thinking, we definitely should.
Exactly, Brandon. Let your students know that, I might make some mistakes, and I want you to challenge me and call me out. None of this is going to be to denigrate any of you, to make any of you feel any inferior. I'm going to try to remove my emotions and my biases and try to be as honest and intentional and deliberate with our conversations as possible. I think as a student, I really appreciate it. And as an educator, when I have those conversations, even though me being an African-American male, reading Chains by Laurie Halse Anderson, which talks about the American Revolution and enslavement, I mention that to my students. I still make mistakes, Brand. Sometimes the things that I communicate to my students may be a little inaccurate. Or sometimes I might slip up and my emotions do get into it, and I apologize. And I try to take a step back, sometimes just literally taking a step back, removing yourself and looking at it from a different perspective. I think that is one strategy that may work. So if you just really preface the entire unit, or even every single day, if you feel comfortable just prefacing it to your students that, again, just want to remind you, 4 agreements, I may make mistakes. I'm trying to be as intentional as possible. I really want this to stick. I love that. I loved it when I was a student. I had a teacher who always did this, and this teacher was an African-American male, and I appreciated that because he didn't step in there like, I'm African-American male, these are my ancestors, I could speak on this anytime, any day. No, you could also make mistakes being African-American talking about enslavement. So it's not just relegated to Caucasian or white teachers. I think that strategy could fit every type of educator, just being really forthcoming with that right before the unit begins, at the beginning of the year. Yeah, I think students will appreciate that vulnerability.
That's what I was, vulnerability, it's an important term, being vulnerable, particularly when it comes to dealing with history, right? Real life events that are deeply rooted in pain, yeah, right? But also, with pain comes prominence and comes victory. So that vulnerability, I think, helps to kind of catapult or transcend that pain. And you got to be able to see both the victories and the pain, the victories, the prominence, everything.
Absolutely. Well said, Mr. B.
Thank you, Mr. Mayo.
Absolutely.
You cease to amaze me, Mr. Mayo.
Likewise. I feel as if I do have that effect on many folks, so thank you, Mr. B.
All right, let's not get carried away. Okay.
Thank you for tuning in for another wonderful episode of Edspective, where you have Mr. B and his Kango, Mr. Mayon, providing our perspective on anything and everything education.
Yes, and once again, Mr. Mayon, remember, you spoke about this, you alluded to this earlier. Mm-hmm. Conversation, inquiry, questions, right? Because there is force, in discourse. Discourse is conversation. Let's talk to each other. There is force in discourse. Edspective, subscribe.